Hello and welcome to RPG PhD. I'm Dr. Ben, and today we have a special treat for you. We have a collaboration. This collaboration came together thanks to our community member Klok Kaos, who connected me with Peter from Tales from Elsewhere and arranged for us to sit down for a design discussion. We ended up talking for nearly 4 hours, so we've split the conversation into 2 videos. Part 1 is hosted over on Tales from Elsewhere. The link is down below, so make sure to watch that first and then come back here for part 2. While you're there, be sure to like and subscribe to Tales from Elsewhere. Peter's doing fantastic work producing high quality, informative content on a wide range of topics, and I highly recommend checking out some of his other videos while you're on his channel. And if you're new here, welcome to RPG PhD. Thanks for watching. Now, without further ado, here's part 2 of our design panel discussion.
I'm really excited about this question. What are some emerging trends or innovations in TTRPG design that you're excited about, and how do you see the medium developing over the next couple of years?
Dr. Ben, you want to start us off?
Sure. A couple things. Intentional minimalism. Games that are systems that cut clutter and they center meaningful player choices. I know I keep coming back to that, but that's something I'm seeing a lot more of nowadays, and I actually like that quite a bit. Also, procedural storytelling tools. I can think of games like Alice is Missing, for example, where we see these narrative structures that are part of the mechanics that we're seeing in new and elegant ways, and even some of the. I mean, in that game, where people are texting each other as part of it, which I think is kind of interesting for a more modern game, obviously. But I like to see some of these other innovations where we're seeing low prep and low stress gaming that doesn't necessarily require tons and tons and tons of prep for a game master, as someone who's busy or who has played for a long time and who doesn't mind prep, but who occasionally would just like, when handed a 300-page rule book, to be able to, set up an adventure and do something quickly and easily without having to memorize said rule book.
People are experimenting more, and I think the indie space is growing, even if it's still a small amount of market share, of course. But people are willing to experiment and really shake that up. And I agree, that's really exciting because this hobby is still so new, really. I mean, because so much of its time was within a certain type of gameplay experience, and with like the potential of crowdfunding, right, and all these other, and social media, some guy making his own game by himself, that's some weird game, right, with a very niche experience, it can get out there and that could exist, and that's super cool. So I agree, that's really exciting. Something that I'm going to actually cite for what excites me is related to that in a way. I'm excited for Daggerheart, not because I think it's a game that I'm not even probably going to play it. I don't even think it's that unique a game, but we are seeing, it's been a long time since we've seen a game potentially carve out market share from D&D. Pathfinder's the last time we had anything remotely actually carve out market share. Right.
Yeah, that's true.
And despite Daggerheart still being fairly trad, like it's fairly traditional, I don't actually believe that it is a like D&D for theater kids. I don't think it actually accomplishes what that is supposed to be, whatever that means. Right. Whatever that's supposed to mean, I'm not sure. But it has enough of Powered by the Apocalypse in its DNA. It has enough of some of these more narrative focused structures that it's going to lure maybe some people away. And that competition in this space is just healthy, because if we could break apart some of that monopoly that D&D has on people's attention, it just means there's more to spread around. And maybe all the critters, what they call the Critical Role fans, if they're being carved away into something with a little bit, hey, it doesn't have a strict initiative now. Oh, that's interesting. You don't have a skill list. You get to pick backstory things that represent what you're good at. Lure them away, and we may see more of that attention being open to atypical structures. And I think that's good from an industry perspective. Now, something I think is negative that's coming, the reliance on digital tools is increasing. significantly. And there's a side of that that is accessibility, which is always good. Setting that aside for a moment, where there are folks that have never made a character in D&D by opening the book and learning how to do it and making that character.
Right.
And there are folks that the online tools have made it for them. And that's good for people that can't carve out the time and so forth. But the more and more digital everything becomes, the less interested in that I become. Because I've got video games if I want to do that. And so what I do think is interesting, though, is you're having digital first role-playing games where there is not a physical product. It is made to be played online in a VTT or with tablets. And that's interesting. I just don't like it. Like for me, like that's interesting. I don't like to play that way.
Welcome to your first get off my lawn moment.
I know. I got my beard gray enough point yet.
It's these days.
Yeah, kids these days. Yeah, get off my lawn. Well, that you'll have games where they are. The designer doesn't need to worry about how onerous the calculation is for any given rule, because the game plays it for you. And it's becoming more and more like a interactive video game than it is a tabletop role-playing game. And I think there's something to be said for building a game that the human brain must process and keep in their mind. And I think that's more interesting, and that's what makes tabletop role-playing games special to me. Because like I said, I play video games with my friends, or I haven't been playing those lately. Like, and that's that space. For me, I want to sit at a table, ideally, put down a book, get out physical dice, and have to process the game together, right, without a digital tool. I mean, when I do a VTT, I only use Owlbear because it's just dice and a map. I don't want the game to be played for me. So there's my old man rant about where I see a negative trend. So there's exciting things, I think, in the future with market share being pulled away from D&D, maybe for the first time in a long time, but also there's a reliance on like character builders and apps and that I dislike.
It's really interesting you bring that up, because I mean that was one of the reasons a lot of people didn't like D&D 4th edition, is because it was designed to be part of a tabletop system that never materialized. It never happened, but the system was designed with that in mind. And that's why a lot of people were like, they didn't like it. It might have been great.
Also seeing more games push in that direction now, such as Dagger Heart, right? Now, I want to add here, too, that I'm less concerned about the game becoming a version that needs to be played digital first. I think that is for a specific kind of player that wants that. And that may or may not be anybody in particular. Where I'm concerned more is the ticket entry price, right? Because it's not just about what the players pay. It's also about what the developers pay to be able to be accessible to players. So you're looking at right now, there are a lot of options right now for, VTTs, but if you want to develop on them, you need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to do that effectively if you want any kind of automation per se, right? And I think there's definitely space for a VTT, like you were saying with Owlbear, where you can be like, yeah, I'm not going to automate everything. I just want to have these features accessible to my players because that's how we want to play, whether it's in person or online. People use VTTs for both. I think that it's really just about the situation of like, until there's a situation that is fully realized, and there are a lot of in the process right now that I really enjoy, that is fully available and accessible to developers and players to use either for free or next to, I think that's really going to limit a lot of smaller games' reach. But getting back to your point about weird games or things that I'm excited about, I want to add also that like I really enjoy the experimental stuff, even though this isn't really new. This is going back to maybe like 2005, 2010, somewhere in there. But games like Everyone is John that don't make any sense and they're insane, but they're experimental and they achieve design lessons that you wouldn't get if you didn't push for something like that. And I'm seeing more games learn the lessons from those smaller one-page games and incorporate them into bigger systems. And that's really exciting for me, is to see like and that's what we were talking about before, is how do I make that moment where I have to cut my arm off to save myself from the zombie bite and shoot the zombie in the head in order to kill it, as opposed to just doing 10 damage over and over until it falls down. I think that those kinds of experimentations are leading to us getting more kinds of niche games. And like I was saying before about the systems, universal games, we've got a lot of them. There's plenty of, but I feel like it's a pretty established market, whichever way you want to go, unless you're going to reinvent the wheel. But we're seeing more and more niche games where you can see absolutely crazy, fantastical ideas that might just be fun. Like one of my token examples that I've never made as a game, but I think I use as my reference example, is like anime space pirate babes fighting space zombies, and that's insane, right? Like, who wants
Why
to play
not?
a game? I do. Like that sounds fun.
Yeah, sign me up. Why not?
Like it just sounds like a good time, as long as you're there for the right reason, right? And we're seeing more games like that get really into a certain kind of niche and catering to a certain type of audience. But that's my excitement.
Well, yeah, another example, it's top of mind because I got to play it for the first time just a couple weeks ago, was Brindlewood Bay. Incredibly niche gameplay experience. You are all grannies. You are all part of a murder mystery book club, and you will solve a mystery together. Like, very specific, incredibly niche, and what a delightful game. I'm so glad it exists as a Murder, She Wrote fan. And, you could say, oh, you could run that in D&D or GURPS, or like you could run that, but this game is tailor-made. Yeah, like it would take a lot of work, and I'd end up just having to rebuild Brindlewood Bay, what Brindlewood Bay already did. Yeah. Right. Just what a hilarious experience to like a group of middle-aged men all playing this game together. It was a riot, by the way. Just absolutely so much fun. What a unique game. And especially from a system standpoint, they did something risky. Have either of you played Brindlewood Bay by chance?
Glanced at it. I have not played it first.
I've seen I'm familiar with the rules. Yeah. But, yeah.
The controversial rule structure is that there isn't an answer to the mystery, a solution built into the adventure. The players determine how the murder was committed themselves based on the clues they find. And that's interesting, right? You as the GM don't need to prep the answer. All you do is create a bunch of suspects, a bunch of clues, and the players tell you, they do the whole, J.B. Fletcher at the end of the episode says her little rant about, hey, oh, you did this because of this and using this thing, right? That's how it ends. But the players do that. And that's a risk. That's interesting, right? Yeah. So we're in that era, right, of this kind of stuff.
Add to that a little bit. I have to do a shout out since you mentioned Brindlewood Bay, but there's another game that's very niche. It was made actually by somebody on Reddit that I encountered. It was always one of the most brilliant designs I've seen, and it's very similar to Brindlewood Bay in that the outcome isn't determined, but it works within the fiction, right? The game is called Escape of the Preordained. It's the only game where I've seen people be able to predict the future and not have it cause some kind of complex timey-wimey stuff because of the way that they designed it. And it's that kind of Brindlewood Bay idea. They resolve it with dominoes, right? And you start with your deck of dominoes, and how you interact with them helps tell the story. And you either escape or you don't based upon the moves that you and the other players make.
That's super. What was the name of that? That sounds super cool.
Escape of the Preordained.
I just need to write that down really quick.
Yeah, I'll check that out for sure. Yeah.
It's so weird of a design, and when I saw that, it was when I was first starting working on my game like 5 years ago, and I was just like, this blew me away. Even though I don't like the idea that it uses dominoes, but it needs to in order to work the way that it does. Because you can't even use cards for it unless you were to make domino-style cards where like they have a half split in the middle. Because the way that your prediction interacts on the domino interacts with the last person's prediction, right?
Oh, interesting.
So yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, so
or
really amazing.
We could cite, Dread or 10 Candles, or, people are just experimenting, like literally light candles, in your session. And that's part of your resolution mechanic. Or even in more, I guess we would say traditional OSR spaces, Shadow Dark says your torches last a real world amount of time. Start a timer when you light the torch. So cool. There's risks there that are paying off, and that's really exciting to see. I mean, Shadow Darks, didn't they just recently do like an expansion or a set of adventures, and it made like hundreds of thousands of dollars on Kickstarter or something, like, and that's basically made by one person, right? It's just Kelsey. You know what? That's so cool that indie designers can take risks and do interesting things, and the community is increasingly open to this, like on a larger scale. It's great to see.
Well, I mean, it brings up the point that, you know, I remember a time when every game that existed, you know, I could name it on one hand, and now there are more games than I could ever play in a lifetime. I mean, you know,
Read.
or read. It's becoming, I was going to say, it's becoming or read as well, because there's so much stuff out there, and I think that's awesome that there is so much stuff out there, and new things are being created every single day, and you just never know. I mean, you never know what's coming next in terms of these niches, but I don't know. I just think to see how far we've come in 50 years is kind of amazing to think about.
Right.
Going from a singular game to all of the thousands and thousands that we have now.
Yeah. Well, and as a content creator, you know, any video one makes, somebody's going to get in the comments and recommend, like, oh, this, have you read such and such game? I'm like, I've never even heard, like, buddy, I can't read all these games. There's just always new ones coming out that people are recommending and introducing. And, I wish, you know, I had double the amount of 48 hours in a day so that I could actually sit down and read some of these.
I actually did really appreciate that, though, when you did poll to find out what everybody thought to recommend. Not necessarily because of the polled answers, but because it was a collective of designers saying this is what you should look at.
It was fascinating.
And seeing that kind of, and seeing all the different breadth and styles of games, you know, that were included in that, because I think everybody has a game they will recommend that somebody start with, or 5. But when you see a collective group coming together and come up with, like, here's a list of like the top 50 that came up, you know, like, that's pretty great. I think.
It was interesting. The community is varied, right? And that's great. It's diverse and varied.
Question of, can I get my table to play something that's not D&D?
Yeah. Like, here's my pro tip to any game group out there. If you want to, because I've been playing with the same table for 15 years now, of which we've tried several other systems. It's to have a rotating DM seat, and whoever's turn it is to DM, the assumption is they can run whatever game they want. They pitch to the group. And if you don't like it, it's okay. The seat rotates, you know, and
seat rotates,
and, you know, we'll try it out. And sometimes we don't like it. Like, we loved the Achtung Cthulhu setting and really disliked the system. That's okay. We still had fun. And then we rotated, and we'll never play the Modifius 2D20 Achtung Cthulhu system again. Maybe we'll adapt it to a different rule system or something. But yeah, pro tip, get a rotating DM seat. Everyone will be happier.
Which does sound, I notice some people that have trouble finding games, like, it might sound really like that's impossible because you can't find one GM, right? But I feel like if you come at it with the approach of wanting to learn, you will find other GMs, and then you can create that rotating table. Exactly. But if you're like, I'm only going to be a player and I'm not going to ever take on that kind of responsibility, it makes it a lot harder to do that.
Yeah. And when you have the assumption of, and nobody's going to run for more than 6 to 8 months, like, where nobody's signing up to run a 5-year campaign, we're just going to, life's too short for us to spend that much time on one campaign at this point. There's too many games we want to try, too many stories we want to tell. It helps. It helps a lot to not sign up.
I do run a forever campaign, right? But my turn doesn't last 6 to 8 months. My turn lasts 2-3 months, and then we're on to the next turn for somebody else.
You can always come back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. I just picked up where we left off.
I envy that. I do. I am the forever DM in my group, and I cannot, for the life of me, no matter how hard I try, can I get anyone to even attempt to sit in the game master chair. So it's I have a larger friend group that we play with online that occasionally will run games and things, but my immediate group, it's like, so that's okay. I luckily I enjoy it, but yes.
Yeah. All right. So for the last question I have prepared, what is your best or your favorite design, whether that's a system, character, adventure, map, etc., that came about by accident And what made it compelling, and what were the circumstances that led to that creation?
In Comet Fall, there's a class called the Brat Waif. They're basically like an orphan child class. They're a support class that they run around and they can help heal things, and they have a backpack that has all kinds of stuff that they collect in it. And I had a player who really enjoyed, for whatever reason, in various games, liked to have little things in jars. So I came up with this conception of one of the abilities for the Brat Waif is that they go around collecting things like snakes and spiders and scorpions, and they have it in glass jars, and they can toss them kind of like grenades and land. And this led to the idea of almost having abilities that are sort of Home Alone-ish, where the Brat Waif can do things like spring trap, this little motif sort of balloon. It's actually a lot of fun to play because you're doing all these kind of things where they're very tricksy and trapsy and can distract and do all these things to cause somebody to gain a condition or whatever. So it was a happy accident, but it was something that turned out to be a lot of fun. So, you've got your little grenade of snakes and spiders and bugs that you can throw at people and, distract them. So
It's like, what a
Also seeing a bit
nightmare.
of MacGyver in there too. Right?
Like Peter's real nightmare is right there. Somebody throwing jars
right there,
of bugs at him or something.
Yeah.
That's great.
Forget zombies. It's the jar of bugs and spiders.
Yeah. And I love that kind of stuff where your playtesters or your local group, their predilections and their funny meme builds or whatever it is ends up being inspiration for a whole design structure, right? A whole class or set of abilities that you didn't anticipate at all, right? That's a lot of fun. I love that. That class, I can see it so clearly in my mind too, just with that description,
immediately, yeah.
right? Yeah, I just see the little bugger, picking up all these jars and throwing a jar of scorpions on somebody, and it's just how awful that is.
Yeah. I'm also picturing a lot of MacGyver stuff with chewing bubble gum.
Yeah.
And using it to be part of the trap and something like that, and just picking up refuse and turning that into something that's useful.
I have some similar experiences where a player's unorthodox approach or desires ended up being something I needed to build in. And the MacGyver reference actually makes me think of that because most groups have the one player that is always trying to not do something that is not in the rules. That's trying to, they'll take the dust of dryness and they'll try to turn it into a weapon of mass destruction somehow. I don't know, just really crazy stuff. And there was a player that was made a tinkerer type character in my game and kept trying to say like, I invent this. I'm like, well, this is all very open-ended. And so I knew I needed to make an ability that was just called Jury Rig, that puts a crisp outer ring around it and left it nice and gooey in the middle. But at least so I knew where the edges of the balance needed to be on it so that like, okay, here's a discrete thing you can do that houses that. Similarly, had a player that wanted to be like a sweet talking huckster, right? He was and didn't want to actually do any fighting. And so he kept going into town and like hiring people to be his gun hands, right? Just trying to throw money at the problem. And so I ended up making an ability that was called Friends in Low Places that lets you like do that more concretely in your build if you want to be the kind of guy that just pays other people to do his dirty work for him, right? These kind of like weird character behaviors or player behaviors are such a fun way to build because then you realize, this is perfect for the game, right? The kid throwing jars of spiders, perfect for the game. And it wouldn't.
I can't wait to run your game. I really can't. It's like
the feeling's mutual. Like these games have just seemed so cool. Those kind of things come about in really interesting ways. But what's kind of interesting about my game was it's not necessarily by accident. But so the wound system, the injury system, I had put years of work into the game before making that part of it. And one of my friends and fellow designers who was helping me throughout that time, he kept saying, Peter, like make a better health abstraction for your game. He's just been telling me that for a long time. And that external pressure to keep questioning what I was designing eventually led to something more substantive that like I woke up in the middle of the night and I finally had it type of eureka moment. But it's in the same vein of like these external pressures and desires from your friends or your game group can reveal things that you wouldn't even Wouldn't have even thought of.
Yeah.
How about you, Klok?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I have one example that's like a million examples from my game in particular, but I'll try to keep it short. But I think that what I've done a lot of the time is find a trope within some kind of media that I'm looking at, because I mentioned this is like a good way to pull stuff, right? I'm like, that's not done in other games very well. Want to represent that. How can I mechanically represent that within my system and fit within my game world setting? And there's like a lot of like various mechanics that I have. I want to say most of these, as far as like player options, are going to be things that are like various feats, right? But like, I was like, all right, how do I make Rocky in my game? Right? And what is the soul of Rocky? You get punched and you fall down and you get back up again, right? The Chumbawamba tune kind of thing.
Right.
And, you know, and I was like, how do I represent this in my system? Because that should be a thing that somebody does. And I was like, what about Captain America's Avengers Assemble, right? Like, what does that do mechanically? And how do I make that happen? How do I make that feel-good trope moment resonate at the table mechanically? And there's just a lot of different things like that. I want to say, like, another thing, too, is that to expand on that is sometimes I find that the worst media is the best places to find this stuff. So not all the time does it need to be good, because sometimes the nuggets can stand out better in rough media. Like, I will go on record as saying I think that Bruce Willis's starring role and the movie Surrogates was not a great movie. But the concept of living human dolls as second skins for people who experience reality through, this had kind of been done a little bit before in Ghost in the Shell, but it was like a special, unique hacker ability. And you're talking about somebody that was actually made of code to do this. This was the first time where people kind of were like, what if normal people do this too? And it's just like a recreational activity as opposed to playing video games. And I was like, I want that, you know? Like, that's a thing that I want to represent. As a result, I have like a whole bunch of these things. I don't know that I'm particularly proud of one of them, but more of the body of work that it represents, to have all these tropes reflected within the mechanics meaningfully. Yeah, so that's my...
Surrogates is a cool movie that is not very good, but that doesn't mean there isn't cool stuff to extract. Oh, and before we started recording, I was mentioning I watched a movie called Pandorum just yesterday.
Yep.
Not a good movie. It bankrupted the studio that made it. It was such a flop, but it would be a perfect game or a session to run in like Mothership or something. You know, you have a crew of people on some long distance space travel. They wake up from cryosleep with some amnesia and something's wrong with the ship. What a perfect setup for an adventure. Movie's not great, but what it presented to you has got great fodder. Yeah, what you then reveal.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that immersion in the media and genre. I've read and watched a lot of Westerns, and not all of them are very good, especially because there's not a lot of Western horror, and so I'm desperate for any that there are, and a lot of them aren't very good. But hey, it's something, you know?
I like the amnesia angle because players can create or discover as it goes.
Yeah, and that's part of the plot, is that they don't know what their role was on the ship necessarily, and maybe somebody's lying, or, there's cool stuff. The movie's very cool, it's just not very good.
Yeah.
I could soft recommend that to people, that it may be worth watching as a little bit of sci-fi horror, but just go in knowing that it literally bankrupted the studio that made it.
Yes.
That's like the idea I keep hearing about. Instead of rebooting movies that are good from the past, we should take movies that are that were really great ideas but just weren't executed very well and remake those instead. Yeah.
Well, I think the problem is, right, that they want to bank on the cash cow of the former franchise being good, as opposed to actually putting the work in to make a good movie. So I don't think people would be even upset about reboots if it was good.
I have a feeling that we could spend another 2-3 hour stream of just us talking about film.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly, for sure.
And the problems with a lot of modern film.
All right. So we've answered our base questions. I feel like we've had more than enough time for everybody's audience to get to know the other, hear a lot of different perspectives about ideas with design. I want to turn it over now to both Ben and Peter. Specifically, we'll start with Peter. I asked them each to prepare table topics that we could just openly discuss afterwards and see where it goes. Because that's really what I wanted to get to, was to get you guys in a room discussing things.
Yeah.
But, go ahead, Peter, take it away.
And then we took a minute to get there, right? We just had such interesting conversations along the way. So to the surprise of no one watching this, I want to talk about health abstractions, wounds versus hit points a little bit. So one of the really common perspectives I do see out there is wound systems or injury systems are really not different than hit points. This is something I see people say, and the idea that they're presenting is they're still tracking a number of hits, of discrete packets of harm before you are dead. And that's that perspective. And I obviously strongly disagree with that perspective. And I want to articulate where I see these differences and why I think the differences actually matter a lot. So let's say that health abstractions are a trip in a car to a destination. In all cases, you're trying to know the end destination is often like oblivion, right? Some sort of fail state or death. And with a hit point system, you're just measuring how close you are to your destination at any given time. And that's really it at its face value. And it's true that a wound system is still going to track how close you are to that destination. But the state of the car changes drastically along the way. The car itself feels different to drive. You know, it could be, you know, a standard hit point system could be like driving my used Prius. It's going to get you there. It's unexciting. It's going to be very simple and straightforward versus trying to drive a monster truck or a Maserati. The experience of that drive is going to be different, even if you arrive at the same destination, especially if as you're driving that Maserati, people shoot guns into the doors or like pieces get blown off and like a tire pops and you have to go pull over and change the tire, right? That journey is very different. And that's where wound structures come in. They're making the trip more interesting, even if the destination is the same. And if you've ever gone on a long drive, hours or days, you know it can be very different depending on the car you're driving, right? That experience is sometimes very different if you've ever had to have a breakdown. As I did a short road trip driving from where I am to San Francisco, you can do in less than a day, except if one of the cars in your little group of friends has multiple flat tires and engine issues. And what could be 6 hours on a good day takes 16. Yeah, that car experienced a wound system on that drive, let me tell you, and that experience was very different. So what I present to us to discuss is that my pitch is wound systems are a way to make the journey interesting rather than just the destination. Thoughts?
I like that. I like that thought process. I know that in my own game, I have gone round and round. I started with hit points, and then I moved to a system where we were, uninjured and mildly injured and that kind of thing. And then I've kind of gone away from that to something else, and I'm not really sure where it's actually landing now. I always think this idea of wounds and hit points and that sort of tracking thing, it always feels in so many ways, in a lot of older games especially, it always feels so gamey. And not part of the fiction, instead of when you think about fiction and someone's injured or hurt and what that does and what that looks like, it feels very different than hit points. And I know it's an abstraction for speed or for lots of different reasons, and there's nothing inherently wrong with it per se, but I tend to like things that are more fiction forward or play more into the fiction about what's going on in universe, in world. Because as you suggest, one of the important things about that is this idea of if characters are hurt or injured, that's going to play into what happens next and what's going on in the fiction, right? If you've broken a leg or you've got an arrow in your chest, what does that look like versus just like, okay, I've taken 20 points of damage. I think all those things are such interesting considerations, and I tend to like things that are more towards the fiction and less gamey in that way. But I find so few systems either do that or do it really well. I don't know what the solution to that is, because I know I've been looking for a sort of a solution too. I think there are trade-offs, of course. Klok, what are you thinking about it?
So I've got a lot of thoughts on this because I put a ton of work into mine, and I even have an actual military battle medic reviewing it for my game, right, to make sure that I'm
Nice.
pushing for that authenticity, right? Because it is still a game. You don't need to be a battle medic to play the game. You're as a battle medic, but I want it so that it represents that in that abstracted way. And I use both because I'm insane. I use both, and not just a hit point system, 2 hit point pools and a wound system. All right, because I want getting into combat to be extremely consequential. I don't want players to do it, even though, and this is kind of a key thing, like the characters in my game are enhanced super soldiers that work for PMSC, private military security company, and go around and do missions, right? So they're literal professional murder hobos. But the impetus of the game design is to push them as far away from that as possible and find literally any other solution to the problem. Or if it does devolve into violence, then that's a choice that they're making to hopefully pull off with swiftness and discretion so that nobody else finds out, you know, as opposed to just giant battle arena monster stuff, which I do have a space for that, but that's not really the main goal of the game. The notion that I have around this is that I think it's important to justify or clarify even, Peter, you're also, the way that you described it, your wound systems have a consequential pseudo death spiral at least built into them, correct? As a point of definition.
Yeah.
Okay. And I absolutely agree that that does have all of the narrative consequences that you're discussing, and that's why I like it. I also don't think that damage and wounds are necessarily the same thing. You know, you can be damaged and still walk it off and be fine, whereas somebody else might be legit laying on the ground from the same kind of wound, from the same kind of source. And that's why I use those distinctions. But I think that where it gets most interesting is walking that line between creating that spiral where it's both consequential but not overbearing.
Right.
And having those stages, because I feel like the term death spiral often has like this negative connotation because of the fact that people have experienced it and their characters went from fully capable to almost dead nearly immediately.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel very good unless you're playing like a one-shot survive till dawn zombies game or something like that, you know, then that might be fine. But in a long-term play context, it doesn't feel very satisfying. And I think that finding that balance is really the key with using wound systems effectively so that there's an impact, but it doesn't immediately cripple you.
Absolutely. That's the death spiral problem is like one of the core issues in wound or injury system structures. And the way that I tackled it is wounds are a problem to be solved in the moment. The complication of that injury, the gushing gunshot wound, is a problem to be solved now. And if you solve that problem, then it is no longer an issue. You're no longer gushing blood, or your leg is splinted and you can still run. But the long-term attrition of still accumulating these wounds, because in my game, a wound becomes treated. You just check the box, but you don't remove it from your sheet. So the complications associated with it are now solved. You got the flat tire, but you replaced the wheel. Let's keep driving. But you don't have another spare wheel now. Right? So there's a long-term attrition that represents where you cannot do this infinitely. And because these boxes start filling up and they become more severe, that's how I tackled it. So it doesn't spiral in that the player's debility from a wound is solvable in right then, rather than like, well, I'm rolling with a -1 penalty the rest of this fight, and that's going to mean I'm more likely to get a -2 penalty and then a -3 penalty, right? They're intended to be things to be solved, because we were kind of talking about that it's more interesting when there's an interaction point for the players. It's not just you suck now, like you get worse. Good luck. There's things to be done, ways for the players to interact with it that gives agency over the process that I'm a big fan of. And when I coupled that with a shared turn, it means that if one player gets mangled by a giant wolf and tossed and he's bleeding out, you can resolve the player's response to this in whatever order you want. So your doctor runs over and starts patching his wounds so that that player who got ragdolled now can act because their wounds have been treated, because you can do it in whatever order you want. It becomes a problem for the team. Like, that guy got his leg caught in the trash compactor and is getting smushed. This is a problem for us to solve together, right? Like, you can't do any of these things in a vacuum, nor can you apply wounds to any game. You have to, like, bake them in to the DNA. Otherwise, you get all those strange consequences like death spirals and so forth. So, yeah, a problem now, but not. I feel like I'm worse at the game going forward, right? That's that death spiral. Like Savage Worlds kind of suffers from this sometimes. You just keep getting a -1 and -1. It's just continual -1. And that just doesn't feel great, I would say. As much as I think Savage Worlds is a cool game, its wound system is really just a stacking numerical penalty, right?
Yeah.
I think where that game tries to solve it is mostly in that you're meant to use all the extra player resources to flip the script and move back up, right?
Yep. You got your
but then you have that
bennies
same situation with where you were talking about before, with players having trouble moving up and down counters with, was it Cypher or Cortex? I think you mentioned. Can't remember. We talked about it a long time ago. All right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Cypher. Cypher with its 3 pools is a different kind of death spiral, where the more damage you take, the less resources you have to tackle problems, which makes it more likely for you to fail and take more pool damage. So that game, I've seen it spiral in that way. Yeah.
So how do you feel about critical tables, considering conversations we had earlier?
Like where I get a result and then we roll for some critical. I think those can be cool, but my preference is where the gruesome details of the thing are intentional. Where if I'm just thinking of, I keep thinking of your game world. I'm pointing around here. I keep thinking of your game world, Dr. Ben. Like I'm imagining like a barbarian with a spear, and he's fighting a nano zombie, like that I could run up and impale them to a wall with the wound system so that they can't get free. That wasn't the result of a random critical table. It was intentional.
Yeah.
Similarly with like shooting the zombie's head, that's an intentional thing that I do. And the types of wounds that are inflicted are based on the weapon I have and how I use it. And with the monsters, it gets real fun with that, because you can get real nasty, real gnarly stuff with the monsters, where I was working on a monster just the other day, and it's the kind of thing that only really works in a wound system. Imagine for short answer, imagine like a big troll that picks up a player by 2 of their limbs and starts pulling. And then you say to the players, get free before its next turn. And if it doesn't, pop, it just pulls a limb clean off. And then it grabs another limb. It's just awful, right? And this, in a wound system, this feels very visceral. When you telegraph and you describe it to the player, they look at the other friends, help. Oh, please help. I'm not going to take 20 points of damage. I'm losing an arm. Yeah. So those kind of moments are just so cool, where you get the numbers out of the way and the player's left with the raw realization that they're being pulled apart like a sadistic kid pulling a spider apart, right? It's just like, it's so good.
Critical tables for you?
So I have a similar philosophy, even though I do use a lot of various tables for things. But the way that I do it when I look at criticals is that what that does in my game is, first, a critical requires a threshold meeting versus the target number to achieve, okay? Each additional threshold you meet after that allows that you have another degree of critical. Not too uncommon. I think Pathfinder does something similar. A lot of games do. But the notion is that for each thing that you have, you get to choose an augment to your strike. And those augments then are that player choice you were talking about. And that allows you to have that intentionality of like, and also gets away from that thing I don't like with the random result that doesn't make any sense, right? Because I can't impale the zombie, the nano zombie with
a sledgehammer.
I just say, I guess you could if you have the strength for it, right?
Yeah.
If you use the handle maybe into a I was gonna say a shield, but like you might have a spike on the shield, but like There's certain things that make sense and don't in different contexts, and this gets away from that by saying if you're using this type of weapon system or platform, it can apply these augments, and they get cooler as you invest more into training with them. So then you get things like, I'm going to go for a direct kidney shot with my dagger, and just like put this guy on the ground immediately, and that feeds into that whole stealth thing, where characters aren't meant to kill each other. This is one of my huge problems with hit points. It is very hard to have a non-lethal encounter if you're using a hit point system. There are systems that do like non-lethal health damage types of things to the same hit point pool, but then you're talking about if you have somebody with 140 hit points and you're doing a D4 punch damage to them, how many you got to punch them, so long that it's like, what is going on here? But with a situation like this where you have very relevant wounds, you can take out an enemy either lethally or non-lethally. You could choke them out, or you could stab them in the kidney. Something like that with greater skill and tactical planning is going to create a situation where you get the desired effect that you wanted. And I also make sure that there's no negative consequences allowed without a save. So like that does slow things down a little bit,
sure,
but I think it makes it fair. If not a save, a reaction,
Right. A point of clarity really fast I realized with my game is there's no critical result on like an attack roll, I guess you could say, in my game, because I use called shots. So if you want to hit somebody in a vulnerable spot, you aim for it. In games that don't do that, I am sometimes a sucker for a fun critical result table. I know earlier I was saying I don't like roll tables, but I do like if there's like a table I roll on and it's full of gruesome details or something, just something really gnarly. I do think that's fun, even if my preference is for the intentional result. If it's an infrequent table that I have to reference, like it's a moment, like, oh, he got the critical wound table, let's roll on that, and it's a fun thing for the table. I like that, but if it's every turn I'm having to reference a table, now I'm starting to check out, right? So I realized the way I was saying this made it seem like I don't think critical tables are cool. Yeah. They can be.
Yeah. Context.
Yeah, context.
I agree with that. I think in terms of it's useful for those occasional moments. I think that's good. But yeah, I think my biggest thing is anything that slows down combat from round to round or whatever, that, if you have to, again, consult the table, that becomes the thing for me. But otherwise, I think they're fine.
I will add too, because of those can be fun. I think as long as there's a house rule or a hard rule within the system that says, also feel free to reinterpret this if it's not working out, that's perfectly fine too. Yeah. It's just that if you're looking at a system from a rules as written perspective, and then you get those hard results that aren't meant to be changed, that's where I get frustrated with that myself.
Like I have random horrific injury tables in my game as inspiration tables. Like maybe you don't have, you're not watch as many horror movies as I do, and so you want to look at like, here's some inspiration for like stab wound descriptions or something, right? Like that kind of stuff can be fun as inspiration because you don't need it for the gameplay. But yeah, I actually really enjoy those kinds of tables. Like, give me the fun details for inspiration, because sometimes I'll just pick one. I don't even roll randomly. It's like, oh, that's gnarly. I'll just pick this result.
That's a good one. Yeah, I think good supplemental rules are always things like, instead of having to roll in the critical table, it's just they die in some gruesome fashion that the player describes or whatever. It's like, how do you want them to die?
Also
go for
a great way.
Yeah, that's fun. And now I've convinced everybody watching that wounds are great. My mission is accomplished.
That's right.
The debate is now over.
Yeah, the debate is over.
Right. The debate is over.
Our discussion on the internet, it's been solved.
We're done.
Forever.
Pack it up, folks. We hit the zenith of design.
There we go.
And never was a contrary opinion voiced again. And that was great. I do want to move on with Dr. Ben. What was your preferred first table topic that you'd like to jump into here?
So it came to my attention, this idea about, is there something that could possibly make a game timeless? So I'm going to talk about that a little bit and sort of unpack that. So one idea might be for what could make a role-playing game timeless, one that continues to be played, referenced, loved across decades, regardless of any shifting trends, might have some sort of cultural context or some nostalgia associated with it, and community support that supports that game, and It maybe has design aspects that give it some sort of enduring power, something like that's part of what's there. One thing, and you can think about this in a lot of different ways. One broad category might be something like elegant core mechanics, something that makes it simple to play or simple to learn or master. And does it have player-driven narrative structures? Does it support emergent play, or does it have tools for collaboration built into what's there? Are there meaningful failure states or evocative character creation? These are all things that might be considered timeless from one point of view or another. Does it have a strong setting, something that resonates, that people find interesting or compelling in some way? Does it have some sort of cultural or philosophical resonance in a way that makes it a part of its time and continues on? Hackability, can it be modified easily or changed in a way that could suit changing ideas? Or maybe even strong social contract scaffolding as part of it. And of course, replayability. Those are all things that might be considered aspects of a game that might cause it to be timeless. So if you're thinking about designing a game and you'd like it to be timeless, there's maybe some things that you could think about in terms of what that looks like. But the other side of this too, and before anybody rushes to their keyboard, I'd like to say this, and that is, I don't know that there's any such thing as a timeless role-playing game. We don't know quite yet. We've got about 50 years of history to sort of look at. Cultural context change in these times. Player expectations are different and change over time. The way that technology has influenced the way we play might change something from being timeless into something else. We might find mechanics of the past to be obsolete, that games have come along and they have much better mechanics than they used to, or they do things that solve problems like wound systems, for example, that revolutionize things, right? That make things of the past irrelevant. Maybe system bloat. Maybe the system has grown too large and too deep and too vast to be contained. Our play culture outpaces the rules. Or our expectations change and shift to what's there. So there's a lot of reasons to think about a game that could potentially be timeless. There's a lot of ideas out there that could do that. But there's a lot of things that I think that are part of that conversation where we just don't know yet what that looks like and what would actually be considered a timeless game in that sense. I mean, I think the closest thing we have would be Dungeons and Dragons at this point in time, because it's sort of the original. But of course, Dungeons and Dragons from its conception is not the same as it is now in a lot of ways. And some would argue it's not even the same game at all. I'm putting that out there for discussion. So thoughts, anybody, about whether you think a role-playing game could be timeless or not?
Yeah, great question. I think on D&D really fast, I've been playing since 3rd edition, so that'd be 3, 3.5, 4, 5, 2024. So 5 editions, technically, even though some of those were minor editions. And the game is not the same in that time. And if we were to compare it to AD&D, if we were to go back to the red box, right, these are not the same games at all. If we were to say those are the same game, then you should say 5th edition D&D and Shadow Dark are the same game. They're not, right? So
yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's a really apt thing to say. It's not that D&D, the game, like the system, is timeless. It's a brand, right, that is shown to be timeless. But yeah, that you bring up so many really good points in there. Something to highlight, when people are making games, I think there's a difference between making, I'll define these terms, a game and making a system. And what I mean by that is, if I pick up Eat the Reich, super niche game. I pick that up, I play, I have everything I need to play. Me, the GM or the player, doesn't have to do much creation. It is a game that you have made. That game is not a timeless game. It is a niche. It's meant to exist in that moment and tell that story alone. And because of that, that package is likely not to be timeless, regardless of the quality of it. While Powered by the Apocalypse, the system, separate from Apocalypse World, right? The system itself is shown to be incredibly enduring. And I expect to see Forged in the Dark as a system to be an enduring methodology, even if maybe Blades in the Dark, the game itself. I mean, heck, they just released the second edition, basically, of it. Not technically second edition. I forgot the name of it. But, changing rules and tweaking some things. But the underlying system is proving to be enduring. And I think when making your own tabletop role-playing game, people should consider, are you making a system or are you making a game? And both are legit. Games are harder, I think, to have staying power because they're more finite, while systems can allow people to keep iterating. And it's that community that really grows it, right? Because we've all been there, in the 3rd and 3.5 era, having open game license, the licensing back then in the early 2000s was very permissive. And so we got a lot of proliferation of the D&D brand. You have groups like Paizo making their whole name in creating content under that license.
Yeah.
And so that can be credited towards some of the enduring power of the D&D brand, is because they let people, the community, have at it. Where if you clutch it to your bosom too tightly and don't let anybody tweak it or play with it from a legal standpoint, I don't know how enduring it's going to be, right? I mean, what are the biggest hacked games right now, like game systems like Forged in the Dark, Powered by the Apocalypse, Morkborg, I'm so bad at pronouncing it correctly, so I just go with Morkborg. Right, those are some of the more hacked systems apart from D&D. And why are they hacked so much? Extremely permissive licenses. Anybody can make adventures, right? And I think that's why they stick around. I mean, Apocalypse World is what, like 2008 or something like that?
Yeah, maybe even.
Was it earlier?
I don't think it was earlier. I don't think it was 2008 explicitly. Maybe it was.
2000. Yeah, Sven looks at that's.
I have got to do a quick Google. Oh, it was 2010.
I feel like it's a little. Yeah, I was going to say 2010 sounds more right, but
yeah.
Even still, 2 years difference. Yeah, no, it's still pretty new. It's not brand new, but it's not an old game. It's not from the original 5 games that we were playing back in the 80s,
Yeah, and there's people that still like to play AD&D as is, right? There's still people that do so.
Original D&D, yeah, sure.
Yeah, they go all the way back. Now, granted, that population probably isn't huge, but that is a testament to some of those games' power. I mean, GURPS was 1988 or something like that, or 86, I forget. And GURPS, as it existed then, is not that different from the future editions that they've created, like from an underlying system standpoint, right?
Mostly balance tweaks and scientific adjustments and things
like that. Ideologically, it's the same game, maybe we could say. And though D&D is ideologically, I think, a different game across its editions, especially when you look at things like 4th edition. Yeah, this is really interesting. There's so much we could take that direction into that. And can you even design a game intentionally to be enduring, right? That's such a tough question. I mean, you can make something that's open, but will it be enduring, right? I've never even thought about that aspect. I thought about hackability when it comes to my own game, and that was a design goal, is hackability. But
I think that's a good one. I think that help, as you say. I think that does help endurance for sure. Mm-hmm. Because, like you said, if somebody can bring in their own ideas and plug it in, it makes it last longer, or at least be open to that possibility.
Right. Yeah. Because then they think, because especially for indies, right, where we don't have a staff of designers, right?
There are millions. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a magic staff, but that's about it. So.
Yeah, exactly. We might have magic mushrooms, but not a magic.
Yes, right. Anyway, yes.
The community out there is what determines the enduring power of it, because that's the only way that adventures and new content realistically can be made with any regularity. If every single adventure for my game when it comes out had to solely be written by me, well, we're not going to get a lot of content then, because I'm just one guy with a day job, and I'll do my best. But if one releases a game that other people can play with and tweak, that helps. And it's been really satisfying in my small community, the small community that I have. People have made their own monsters for my game. And what I've told them is, this is awesome. And just so you know, I know I haven't publicly said it yet, like you could publish this once my license is out for free. Like you could make your own monster book for my game fully, open in that way. Just put a stamp on it that says that it's compatible with my game and that, you have liability for whatever you write, of course. But, there's no cost there. I think that's investing in a community, which then invests in endurance.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah.
But it's okay to make a game that's super narrow too, like Eat the Reich or what's another really neat? Night Witches is super niche about, was it like World War II era Russian bombers, specifically women bombers in World War II in Russia. Yep. Incredibly niche, based on real people. Super cool. But
Very
likely
specific, yes.
Super specific. You're not likely to get a lot of hacks of that system, right? Of that game.
Right.
Right. I got to jump in here because I want to pull up Lady Blackbird as a prime example of making a very specific game that then turned into a mechanic that literally everybody uses.
Right.
Now. Well, not everybody, but like a massive amount of creators use with their more open tag systems.
Right.
And to elaborate, I do think and I love that you added so many different reasons as to why something might be relevant to a game's lifespan, because I do think that it's not just mechanical and it's not just the community. I think those are interacting with each other, and that creates that sense of community that people want to contribute to, and the mechanics also help with the accessibility of that. When it comes to the notion of can something be timeless though, and I would say I would want to define it as can it survive a generational gap of 20 years, right? Because we really don't know enough beyond that. And we can look at things like, is Batman transcendental as a trope? It's well, I mean, and compared to all of human history or the history of the universe, no, obviously, right? But is there anybody on planet Earth now or within the next 20 years that is not going to know who Batman is? Probably not.
You don't need to show Martha and Wayne being shot. We all know.
We all know his parents were killed. It's done. So I would say the best you might hope for is 20 years, but I don't know that there's a specific solution to design something that appeals to the zeitgeist. Because I feel like there's two major factors at play in that. What consumers want is ephemeral and changes with the wind.
Yes.
Maybe they woke up on the wrong side of the bed that day, or maybe they're in the best mood ever and are looking for exactly your game. That's a coin flip right there, And then also the ability to tap into that. I don't know that you can just predict, even with current algorithms, what is going to be popular tomorrow. You can guess based on established things that have happened, especially if you're producing a new idea. There's no way to know if that's going to catch or not.
What I was going to say is, because I wholly agree, and it's why if one is trying to make something that they want to stick, the best way is to make something that you love, because chances are there's other people like you, right? And that community may just buy what you sell, right? They may just be super on board. But it's very hard to predict. There's very few, especially in tabletop, one of the most guaranteed things is actually new seasons of Stranger Things directly increase D&D sales. It's actually now that there's been so many seasons of it, you can actually see that there's a spike every time a new season's announced and when it begins. So that's the time if you're going to release something loosely associated with Stranger Things, right? Because there's a major TV show that millions of people watch. But I remember reading, relevant to this, Klok, your post about how to even conceptualize what your game is to an audience such that they understand what your game is and might be interested. You're talking about you have a super soldier game and how hard it is. Yep. It's not superheroes, but there's similarities in structure here about the power levels of the characters, and it's very hard to articulate that to people. So that
if they're not already on board with that,
sure. Unless they were watching Universal Soldier or like me and all of its sequels, there's a challenge with even communicating and finding the community, before even wondering if that community will hang on to the game. And that's hard. And that's a marketing aspect that's super tough. Like, I know personally, different skill set. Like, as soon as Dr. Ben, you were saying, you know, it's sword and sorcery, post-apocalyptic, and there's nano zombies, I need to know nothing else. Because this is...
I'm there.
Right, yeah, like, let's go. And when I was reading the description, Klok, for, you know, your Project Chimera and all that, and when the super soldier idea, because I'm a big fan of, like, a lot of these 80s and early 90s super soldier movies, I'm like, yes, I get it, but I already am part of a community that would connect to that. So it's hard. It's very hard. And I feel like I still have so much to learn in that regard as well. Finding the people that want to dress up as a cowboy and shoot some zombies, right, in a game, right? Like that's a very specific thing. And how you package that is tough, right?
Especially, like you say, the people that aren't on board already, right? To kind of go, why, you know, it's like, if you're not already on board with that idea or some of the ideas we have for our games, it's like, well, how do I convince somebody that, trust me, this is cool, okay? I promise. Right.
Trust me, it's cool.
Trust me, it's cool, right?
At that point, self-promotion is working against you, right? Like, it's not helping the situation. And I think that it's definitely a situation of, like, there's some marketing theories that go back to, like, the 7 times repetition thing. And, like, you know, if they hear about it from their friend and they see the ad line online and then they see somebody else talking about it on a forum, by the time they hit 7, they're going to be bought in if there's a possibility for it, right? But that's going to be your on the fence people. Some people are automatically on board and some people are adamantly against whatever you're doing, just as, you know, that's just not my thing for whatever reason, or I don't like the way that it's presented or whatever. You know, I don't like that your female dwarves have beards, might be a reason, right?
Those people are objectively
hotly
wrong.
Divisive. Yes, that's true. But there's no way to convince them otherwise, right? You can't talk them into a position.
And why would you, right?
Way.
Yeah.
What's right for your game?
There is no universal game that everybody's going to like because the TTRPG community, that zeitgeist is not a monolith. And
exactly.
I don't want to try to convince somebody to play my game if it's not for them. That's okay, right? Especially because I feel, well, all 3 of us are making games that are fairly niche and that we're telling a specific type of gameplay experience rather than making a GURPS. Even if the engine we're building could be applied in other game contexts.
They can all be moved to other games.
Right? Even a game like GURPS, though, really isn't going to appeal to everyone. Because you can place it into any genre you want, but the underlying mechanics don't appeal to every gameplay experience. So that's not universal. And it's the generic universal role-playing system. If that one isn't universally accepted, what hope do the rest of us have as appealing to everybody, right?
Plus all of the decades that they've been alive and kicking and all of the R&D that's gone into that and money and marketing and legacy branding, you know. And like you were saying too, like unlike D&D, like that game's really consistent as to what it is now. I think the only major shift was when they realized they started putting out settings as a way to get more people to play it, right?
Yeah, the monetization question.
But that doesn't change the system rules. It just changes how much money the company makes. Another one would be early editions of World of Darkness, Vampire the Masquerade, stuff like that. Very different play experience from the newer editions now. Mainly because the world changed and time moved on and we have cell phones now and things like that. And that drastically affects how the game plays and the way that it should feel to live in that world.
The Cyberpunk line of games is also a similar case study where it mechanically has shifted significantly, where the crunch has gone down overall. I would say Cyberpunk Red is still a little crunchy for most people, but it's nothing compared to previous editions. So its identity has shifted, even if what draws people to it are the mohawks and the cybernetics, right? Like there's an aesthetic that they like, even if the game has shifted. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Well, and part of what I'm doing right now, when this video is being recorded, is to see if I can market something, right? I'm at that stage.
You're at that stage.
Right? And it's interesting. We'll see. We'll see in the next couple months after this is being recorded.
Full confidence.
I appreciate the vote of confidence. It's interesting, and I think that we are living in the best time so far for independent designers to create something and get it out there for comparatively low financial investment because of crowdfunding. I know crowdfunding can be a mixed bag, but it means that if somebody has an idea and you can communicate it to your community, that community can vote with their dollars for your idea. This is something we want, they will say. And if they say no, well, then hey, that means what you made was not for that community, potentially. So it's an interesting time.
For sure.
Dr. Ben?
I mean, yeah, I absolutely. I think we're definitely in a new age with a lot of this, where you don't have to have a staff to do things. And there's some really great and innovative and amazing things that designers are out there. I just want to encourage anybody watching this who wants to design their own game. I just want to encourage you to do that. I know that we'll have some ups and downs, and it might be difficult at times, and you may wonder, why am I doing this? If you've got a passion for something, pour yourself into it, because more than likely there are other people out there that might share that passion or who might be interested in something that you're interested in that way. And maybe you do have a unique perspective on something, and you can create something that we haven't seen before. That's what I love to see that. The more innovation and the more sort of games in the space where people are really innovating and just pouring their hearts into their systems and working them and putting them out there. I mean, I love that sort of stuff, and I want to see more of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just second that, right? That's what we're doing. I'm gesturing the wrong direction on the recording. That's what we're doing with our YouTube videos. It's, hey, go make things. Here's some guidance on how to do it. And this guidance is free, right? You just pop open YouTube. You have to suffer through ads usually because it's YouTube, but that's the cost.
Unless you pay the money.
Yeah, unless you pay the money.
Yeah.
But really the only thing, there's no barriers there. You don't need to go sign up for online classes per se to at least get started. There's extra layers of study you could do, of course, right? You can go deeper, but yeah, make a game. I mean, do it, right? Open up a notebook and just make a game. Make a silly game even. It doesn't have to be perfect.
And just remember, the advice we give is often descriptive and not proscriptive. So that means that you can take the advice that we give and our design elements and our design theories, and you can go, that's perfectly fine. There are other ways to think about it and do it. We just like to present the information just to give you ways to think about it and maybe a different lens to look at something that you may not have thought about before. So because I say that because I get a lot in the comments about, no, you're wrong. This is terrible. Why would you ever tell anybody to give this advice to design something? It's like, well, it's not absolute. It's just,
If you put hit points in your game, I won't come to your house and kick your dog or something, right? It's okay. Just, you don't have to make me happy.
Right. Exactly.
I think actually the best result is when somebody takes something you think, you say as an advice point, thinks about it, has a good reason why it's wrong for their game.
Yeah.
Because that means that they thought about it and they have an intentionality.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah, if hit points, you come to hit point structures, whatever that may be, because you thought through it and really put the time in, awesome. Your game will be better for it, right? It doesn't have to match our particular aesthetic, whatever that may be. Yeah, that's all good advice. Yeah.
All right, so thank you, everybody. This was a blast for me. We had a great time. I hope everybody watching learned something, enjoyed something, got something of value. And let us know in the comments if you wanted us to do something like this again. We still have plenty of stuff we could talk about. And on that note, we'll just go a quick round with everybody to discuss our last minute plugs. Dr. Ben, can we start with you?
Yeah, of course. I just want to say thank you so much, Clark, for putting this together. And Peter, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed talking to you all today. It's been fantastic. Love to do it again anytime. So that's great. Come over to RPG PhD, check me out, take a look. If you're an artist and you're interested in Cometfall or maybe contributing to that project, you can reach me over there. Just drop me an email and we'll get a conversation going. Again, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it today. It's been great.
Yeah, it's absolute blast. And if you want to learn more about my game that I've been talking about a lot on this stream, there's links all over my YouTube channel. There'll be a link in the description to the Kickstarter that's either going to be sign-up page when this airs or will be live. And there are free demo packets. You can check out much of the game without paying anything if you want to check it out ahead of time. And like Dr. Ben, my channel has these long-form videos, and our channels work synergistically together. I highly recommend watching both of them because we'll cover similar topics, but bring different perspectives to them and expand on different points. So they're like the perfect pairing of design. And yeah, definitely thank you to Klok for reaching out to the two of us with this idea to just hang out for an afternoon and talk shop. And I know that we could talk a lot more about a lot more things. A shortage of conversation pieces was not our problem here.
So for me, if anybody's looking for any of my stuff, I am not at this time pushing any YouTube content. I will be eventually, but for now, I'll have some social media links for everybody for various preferred platforms. I tend to use Facebook the most for more regular updates, but otherwise, if you want to check out my game, please do. And I've had a blast, and thank you both very much for the opportunity to speak with both of you and bring this together.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
And that wraps up part 2 of our design discussion with Peter from Tales from Elsewhere. A huge thank you again to Klok Kaos for bringing us together and making this collaboration happen. If you're new to RPG PhD, welcome aboard. We dive deep into tabletop role-playing game design theory and storytelling every week. So if you enjoyed this discussion, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss future videos. Lastly, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let us know what design topics you would like us to cover in future panels. And as always, thanks for watching. See you next time.